welcome back to the Lean and Lou channel. Today we're going to be making things with the supplies that Beebeecraft sent me. As you can see here, I made a previous video, but in this one we're going to be using the wooden discs, the velvet ribbon and the satin cord to create two bunny keyrings. One will be using craft glitter felt, and this one that we're going to make first is going to just use budget grey and white felt that everybody has. Now the reason I'm making two is because one's going to be an easy version for people that do not craft with resin. The second one is going to use my craft resin. So you can watch both and pick what one you like the best. So for the first keyring, we're going to take our discs and we're going to draw around them. We need two of the large and one of the small. Now you can use any colours and it doesn't need to be a bunny. You can make this any animal you want. As you will see as we progress, it's a really simple design that could be changed. Now on the second one, you don't want to draw all the way around. You want to leave yourself a gap to add the ears, because you're going to draw in the ears on this one. Now I found the best way to cut out the ears was probably to draw one ear, cut out most of it, fold it in half and cut the ears at the same time to get more symmetry, but for the video I just showed you drawing two of them. So once you've cut out that, you're going to take it and draw around your ears a second time, but you're not going to do a complete circle, you just want the top half of its head. And you're also going to cut that out. So now you should have the pieces as shown: a circle with the ears and just the ears, and one little muzzle circle. And this is how they're going to go together to make it a little more understandable. This is how we are going to compile our keyring to make a bunny. Now if you want this project to be really polished looking, if you're using felt, then I suggest that you do all the pieces sewn together rather than glued. I'm just showing here that you need to cut two strips. You need to do them the width of the discs, one in your main colour, and you'll need one for your muzzle. Just make sure you cut an extra long strip that can go all the way around the outside of your circle disc. If you're sewing your pieces together, make this a little tiny bit wider so it's easier for you to sew while on the piece of wood. So these are all the pieces, and I'm adding two flat back black gems to this for the rabbit's eyes, but you could cut out little circles of felt or you could use paint. It's totally up to you. I'm taking white thread and grey thread to use to sew my details together. First of all, we're going to sew around the ears just to join them to the back piece. You can glue this if you're not a sewer. I just happen to think it would look better if they were sewn together, so I am sewing these two pieces together. I'm just using a simple blanket stitch. That's where you loop the thread around the needle every time you push it through, and it creates a little edge as you sew. And the only part that you do need to sew together, if this is the only sewing you want to do, is just around this ear area to hold it together and give it a much neater look. Okay, once you've got that done, you're going to now turn your attention to the little muzzle, and you're going to draw on your rabbit's nose and mouth. If you're making another animal, you might want to use another glue-on petal as a nose or do a different design. Now with the dark grey, I'm just going to use a chain stitch and embroider that detail on there. And then make sure to secure your stitches at the back. That's all the sewing I'm doing for this project, unless you're someone that's going to sew it all. And now I'm going to use a permanent Sharpie in baby pink just to add in some little ear details. You could also cut this out of pink felt and sew these or glue these on, but I was just going for quickness here and add in little cheeks. Once again, you could cut these out of pink felt circles. So now we have all our components. We're going to use hot glue and glue them together, and I was fighting with my hot glue gun this day. The wire kept getting in the way and it kept switching itself off because of where I kept laying it down. So yeah, it was a challenge. You're going to glue the disc to the ears first, and then you're going to glue your large white piece to the front of that wooden disc. The good thing with hot glue is you can squeeze it about and push it to the edges. You're then going to glue your little grey muzzle piece to the second wooden disc, and then you're going to glue your grey strip around the edge of this piece. Just make sure you overlap your felt a little bit so that it hides the edges, and if you're sewing this would be a good time to start sewing edges together. If you're sewing it, make sure you don't put glue near any of the edges. You just want to use minimal glue to hold them on and let your sewing do the rest. So you trim off any excess, make sure the edge is nice and sealed down, and then you're going to glue this to the rabbit's face on the lower half of its head. And just position it and try and make sure it's straight. And this is where I realised I had forgotten to insert the little satin cord for the keyring, so I had to rip the ears off a bit and insert it. So make sure you do that before you add the ears onto the back of the disc. It's a heck of a lot easier. Then I'm just going to glue that back down so that satin ribbon loop sticks up, and that's going to be where our keyring joins on. And then I'm going to add my final strip of felt just to finish off this little bunny's head. So that glues all the way around, and you trim off the excess. Okay, so once you have done that, now is the time to glue on your little eyes. I'm using a relief paste, which is actually glass glue, but I find it works really amazingly well when gluing things like sequins to fabric. It's really strong, and I leave that to dry for a little while. And I'm going to attach my keyring at this point. I am not adding any other things to my keyring other than the rabbit's head, but you could add little bead dangles or other cute things if you wanted to make this keyring a bit fuller. And the last thing I'm going to do for this felt version is make a little bow. Now, to make a bow is really simple. You take 2 loops of your velvet ribbon, and you tie them together like that. Pull them tight, and then you can adjust the size of the bow by pulling on the 2 ends like I'm doing until you get the size you desire, and then you trim it and stop the fraying by melting the ends. And I'm just going to use some hot glue and secure that to my bunny's face just underneath the muzzle. So I'm putting the glue at the top of the bow there, and that is it for the felt version of the keyring. Super simple, easy to make. I do think sewing all the pieces together would make it look a lot more polished and professional, but it's a really cute way to use wooden discs if you don't know what to do with them. So this is version 1. Let's make the same exact bunny head but in a completely different way. Okay, on to version 2. Now a lot of the steps are quite similar. We're going to use the glitter felt here. I'm just going to use white and make it an all one colour bunny. So I'm going to turn my glitter felt over and I'm going to draw around the circle twice. We only need 2 of these this time. And each of these circles we're going to draw some little bunny ears on, but the best way to do this is to map out one with bunny ears and then use it as a template to do the other one, because you want them to match exactly. So as you can see, drawing on some bunny ears, you're not going to see any of these lines because it's at the back. And I do change the position of my bunny ears. As you can see, I put them closer together. So you need a front and a back that glue perfectly together to make 2 sides of your bunny. Now with the pink glitter felt, I'm just going to draw the little ear inserts that I did with the Sharpie marker on the first one. I apologise about this weird lighting. I was unaware that my camera was having some kind of fit concerning my lights, and I will make sure it doesn't happen in future videos. Now those two little pink bits, you want to glue them on up above where the circle of your head is going to sit so they don't interfere with gluing on. Now I'm going to go on to now painting my pieces of wood. I'm using white gesso. Depending on what colour bunny you're making or what animal you're making, this is obviously going to change. But I'm going to make sure I paint the entire pieces and the edges on just the front side of both. And it's probably going to take a couple of coats if you're using a light colour. I think mine took 2 coats to do this. And I was making a very nice mess while I was at it. So 2 coats later, my front one here is still a little bit damp. You are now going to glue them together with hot glue. This is why we don't paint both sides, because glue sticks much better on a raw surface. So you're going to glue that lower down on the face, and you're going to use a strong adhesive if you're going to put your little eye beads like I did with the felt one. You can draw on eyes, you can use stickers, it's up to you, it's your design. I'm using the same flat back black petals. I think I just bought these ones on eBay because I make a lot of toys, so they're perfect for little eyes. Perfecto. And I'm going to take some pink acrylic paint in this pink shimmery colour. And I'm going to put on some little cheeks. Now this is quite a dark colour because as we're putting glitter on this bunny in a bit, you want it to be able to shine through the white glitter. So don't worry about how intense it looks, it's just because I want it to show through. So I did a little on the back and the front of the wooden pieces. And then I'm putting that aside to dry. Now while that is drying, I'm going to glue together my glitter felt. This time I'm remembering to put in my little hanger in the middle that is going to be the keyring holder. And much like ribbon, with satin cord you're best to melt the ends to stop any fraying or unraveling. And you just want to glue that between the layers. It's so much easier when you remember to do this step now instead of having to pull things apart later. So I'm just lightly gluing that in place. Make sure you have enough of the loop sticking up between the ears that it's easy to put your keyring attachment on later. And stick them down, and then you're going to first of all glue the ears down. It's easier to do this in 2 parts. Deal with the ears first so you can get around your little tab, get near all the edges, and the glue is still hot enough that when you press the ears down after aligning them, you can squeeze them all the way around that satin cord and shape it around it. It just makes it a much better seal. And then glue the rest of the head with hot glue. Okay, and now I'm going to take my little pink ear inserts, and just using hot glue again, I'm going to glue them in place. Now if you prefer fabric glue to hot glue, by all means. I find hot glue works just fine on glitter felt. It makes a pretty strong bond. Just don't use an obscene amount of it, just try and keep it thin. Make sure when you put the ears on you stay above the circle of where the head's going to sit, just so that it sits more flush when you glue it on later. As you can see, the head fits just underneath those ears. Okay, I'm going to take a black acrylic paint pen and I'm going to draw in the little details of the face. Make sure when you're doing this you pick a pen that dries and does not shift, because we're going to be putting Mod Podge over this, so if you have an ink that runs, it will smear everywhere. I'm adding some little eyebrows, some little whiskered dots and his nose. and I'm going to let that dry fully. So while that's drying, this is when I decided to add my keyring to the backing. And I think this is my favourite version of the keyring. I love how the way it ends up when it's finished. It's totally something I would gift to someone, and there's so many animals you could make with this design. It just comes down to changing the ear shape, the colours, and whatever little details you draw on the face. Okay, so now before the glittering, I'm going to add this little resin bow. I think this is one that just came from eBay. I'm going to use that same really strong transparent paste. This glue is my all-time favourite glue. It's by Marabou, and it literally holds everything together. It's so strong. And make sure, unlike me, you make sure your bow is straight, because yes, I made it squint. Okay, now we're going to take our Mod Podge and we're going to do a pretty even layer. Try not to overdo the Mod Podge because you will take an age to dry and there's really no need for it. So try and make quite a thin, even layer. You're only going to do the flat surfaces, not the edges, because these are the parts that are going to be covered with resin. As you can see, my pen was not completely dry, so I had a little bit of smearing, which you can just wipe away with your brush if that does happen to you. Try not to cover his little eyes because we don't want them to be glittery. And try not to cover his bow either, but do cover the top part and the edge that is facing up on the bottom part. Then we're going to cover the whole thing in a white iridescent fine glitter. Just chuck it on there. Give it a minute to settle into the Mod Podge, and then we're just going to tip it off very carefully, tap it off, and then lay it aside and do not disturb it until it is completely dry. Just leave it as it is. Okay, when it is completely dry, take a fluffy brush and brush off the excess. This will uncover his little eyes, take it off the bow, remove anything that would float in your resin later. So give it a good tap, give it a good brush down, and that is the glitter stage over. So now we're going to move to the resin. Now, before anyone complains I'm not wearing gloves, I have a glove allergy. I use barrier cream that is for resin, so don't come for me. That's why my hands are shiny. I'm going to measure out using a little baking spoon my equal parts of resin. Give it a good mix, leave it to degas. I do a lot of resin videos, so if you like resin, go and look at my channel. There are lots of videos. Mix it up, degas it, and then start layering it on. Don't overlay it, you don't want it to pour everywhere. And if you've sealed your bow on right against your wooden disc the way I have, you should not have it seeping down the sides of the bows and making a mess. It should stay pretty much on the wood. Now's a good time to remind you to go and hit the subscribe button and the like button and leave me a comment, because we are trying to rebuild our algorithm after YouTube completely removed mine. I'm just getting rid of some air bubbles with the lighter here and left it to dry for 24 hours because I was lazy. But it's cool, look at it, it's lovely. So then I'm just going to take my backing, some hot glue because it works just fine on wood and glitter felt, and we're going to glue these two pieces together. My glue is a little bit yellow because I have a bad habit of leaving my glue gun on when I'm not using it. So squish that in place, make sure it's a really tight seal, and voila, we have the second version of our keyring, which I prefer much more. I feel like it looks way more professional and giftable, but they're both kind of cute. So these are the two versions using the Beebeecraft's wooden discs and the satin cord and some of their velvet ribbon. Let me know what you think of this craft. Are you going to make it? What you would do different? And I will see you in the next video. Bye!